I never imagined my own son would reduce me to just the housekeeper in my own home. They'd been planning their dream trip for months. Europe, finally. The kind of trip you talk about over wine and map-covered coffee tables. I knew all about it. I wasn't meant to, but I overheard the cities, the dates, the excitement in their voices. I always wanted to see Europe. Always. But I shelved that dream long ago, like so many others. That Tuesday morning, sticky and sour, I gathered what little courage I had left. The kind you save for doctor's offices and difficult phone calls. I'd been folding Brian's shirts from the dryer. His socks, too. Tight rolls, toes tucked in, the way he liked when he was 7. I shouldn't still know how he likes his socks, but I do. He came in, sunglasses perched on his head, phone buzzing like a second heartbeat in his hand. I asked it quietly, gently, like I was asking for a ride, not for my dignity. Would it be okay if I joined you all on the trip this summer? I heard you're going to Europe. He didn't even look up, just laughed. Mom, he said, grinning like I'd told a joke. At your age, waking up is the best adventure. Just watch the house for us. I nodded, smiled even, because that's what I've learned to do. Smile while swallowing shards. He kissed my forehead like I was a fragile thing and walked out of the room. I heard him in the hallway. She wants to come with us. Can you believe that? His voice floated back, followed by Ashley's laugh. My daughter-in-law. Her laugh has always sounded like glass tapping marble. Polished, cold, hollow. I sat down on the edge of the couch, the laundry basket still in my lap. One of his socks had fallen to the floor. I didn't pick it up. I just stared at it, my stomach pulling tighter and tighter. They were going to Paris, to Rome, to Vienna, a trip I had dreamed about since I was 23, staring at travel magazines in a break room while eating a peanut butter sandwich I could barely afford. I'd always said, someday, when I retire, when Brian's grown, someday. Well, someday came, and it laughed in my face. The thing is, I didn't expect a grand gesture. Just a space at the table, a seat on the plane, a moment where I mattered to someone. But in this house, I've become background noise. They live in it like it's theirs. Their smell on the couch pillows, their shoes by the door, their voices echoing louder than mine ever do. I'm the one who paid off this mortgage, the one who kept the lights on when Brian's father left, the one who worked nights sewing hems and fixing blouses for women who could afford Europe. I've watched other people's dreams come true from behind a sewing machine. And now my own son, the boy I once wrapped in a blanket and whispered lullabies to during storms, tells me that waking up is adventure enough. I forced myself to stand, took the basket into the hallway. They were packing already. I could hear the zippers, the laughter, the future being zipped shut without me. I walked past their suitcases. I walked back to my room. My suitcase was already packed. It had been for a week. I never said it out loud. I just hoped, maybe if they saw it, maybe if they noticed the way I lingered by their travel brochures or looked up train routes on my phone when I thought no one was watching. But they didn't. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. And that's what gutted me, not the rejection, the fact that it didn't even cost them anything to do it. Not a second thought, not even a pause. Just a laugh. Just watch the house. Like I was a pet. And I nodded. Like always. But inside, something cracked. Not all at once, just enough to let the air in. And for the first time in years, I felt it. A flicker of anger. A tiny, sharp flame. They left at 6:40 a week later. I watched from behind the curtain, tucked between the folds like a ghost in my own home. Their laughter came first, then the wheels of the suitcases bumping down the steps. Ashley barked at the kids to watch the door as Brian loaded the luggage into the trunk like it was some great expedition, which, for them, I suppose it was. A grand, curated adventure. Luxury hotels, wine tastings, gelato by the Trevi Fountain. I had packed it days ago, just one pair of sensible shoes. 2 outfits I'd imagined myself wearing on cobblestone streets. A cardigan, navy, The one that makes me feel a little less invisible. Tucked inside. My passport application. Still unsigned. Still a fantasy. They didn't even notice it. Never asked. Brian honked once, and they all piled in. I could see Ashley's sun hat already perched on her head in the back seat, like she was starring in a travel brochure. One of the grandkids waved absently. He didn't know. Not really. Not yet. The car backed out. I didn't cry until the taillights disappeared. I stood there for a long time. It was quiet now. The kind of quiet that presses against your ribs, demanding you feel it. So I walked to the suitcase and opened it slowly, like maybe I was unsealing a wound instead of a zipper. I took out the first blouse, folded it again, set it back in the drawer. Then the shoes. Then the little travel wallet I bought last winter at the outlet mall, just in case. Hope is a cruel thing when you keep it packed. By the time I got to the bottom, my hands were shaking. Not from grief, exactly. From something deeper. That familiar cocktail of shame and stupidity. How many times have I done this? Prepared for a place no one invited me to? I placed the cardigan back in the drawer last, closed it, then sat on the edge of the bed, letting the silence fill in the cracks. Later that afternoon, I walked the hallway slower than usual. It wasn't age that made me slow. It was weight. A kind of heaviness that settled in your bones when you finally let yourself admit you're not wanted. Not in the way you hoped, not even in the way you deserved. I paused outside the guest room, if that's what we were still calling it. It used to be my sewing space, my sanctuary. Now, stacked plastic bins lined the wall like tombstones. Kids' clothes, toys age 4+, winter boots. Ashley's handwriting, all caps, bold and territorial. She had taken it over 6 months ago. Casually at first, then completely. Just for a bit, she said. We're out of space upstairs. And Brian, he said nothing. Just nodded. Just watched me shrink. I stepped inside and didn't recognize anything. The curtains I'd sewn years ago were still there, but faded now, bent from being tugged too hard by little hands. The air smelled like artificial lavender. Candles she bought in bulk. Candles I was allergic to, not that she ever asked. I backed out slowly. My foot hit the hallway runner. I caught myself in the mirror. The hallway mirror. That long, thin thing I used to check my lipstick in before job interviews. Now, it just startled me. The woman staring back was smaller. Her shoulders rounded. Her skin pale from too many hours indoors. My sweater was clean but stretched. Like it too had lost its shape trying to fit into a space it no longer belonged in. I paid for this house, I whispered. I hadn't meant to speak, but the words slipped out. Quiet, small, real. I raised Brian in this house. I remember when the fridge fit sideways through that door. I remember when we pulled up the old carpet with our bare hands because we couldn't afford a contractor. I stared at myself like I was daring that reflection to argue. I used to host birthday parties in that kitchen. Now I knock before I enter it. That one caught in my throat. But I said it again, because it was true. I knock before I enter my own kitchen. I laughed once, short and bitter. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. That I had become a tenant in a life I built. A placeholder in the background of someone else's comfort. I just live around their schedules now, I murmured. Hide when they have guests. Pretend I didn't already make dinner when Ashley starts pulling out groceries. I pressed my hand to the edge of the mirror. Cold glass, thin. Maybe I stopped mattering to them, I whispered. But I still matter. I didn't say it like a battle cry. I said it like a truth I was trying to remember. And for a flicker of a moment, I believed it. Because somewhere, beneath the years of shrinking and nodding and folding towels just the way they liked, there was still a version of me who remembered, who paid the mortgage, who stayed up with a fevered child, who gave up dreams so they could build theirs. And she wasn't dead. She was just waiting. The next morning, Rita showed up with a grocery bag and her usual commentary, biting and warm, like the woman herself. Your fridge better not still look like a college dorm, Margie. She barked from the doorway without knocking. I brought decent food. You're not living on toast and coffee again. I didn't answer. Just turned back toward the sink, letting her clatter in behind me. She wasn't wrong. It was toast and coffee yesterday, and the day before. No appetite when the silence tastes like rejection. She opened the fridge with a groan. "Margaret Louise," she muttered, pulling out a near-empty milk carton. "How you let these people live in your house and still starve your own fridge is beyond me." I stayed quiet. She finally turned to look at me. "You okay?" I nodded too fast. "Mm-hmm," she said flatly, not buying it for a second. "So you're telling me you're fine with being left behind while they trot across Europe on your dime?" I flinched, just slightly. But she saw it. "Oh, honey," she softened. "Set the milk down. You don't have to pretend with me. I've known you since Brian was in pull-ups." That broke something loose. A laugh. Small, shaky. "They didn't even ask me, Rita. I asked them." And they laughed. Her face hardened. "He laughed at you." I nodded. Rita leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You're still paying the property taxes, right?" That one hit low. I hesitated, then nodded again. "That's what I thought." She shook her head, muttering, "Unbelievable. You're footing the bill for the life they live, and they've got you knocking on your own damn kitchen door." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My throat felt thick. "You still have the deed, don't you?" The question made me blink. "The deed to the house," she clarified. "Is it still in your name?" "I think so." Rita narrowed her eyes. "Think or no?" I've never changed it. It should be." "Well then." She straightened, fierce now. "Then maybe it's time we stop acting like you're a guest in your own damn home." She walked to her purse and pulled out her phone. "I know a lawyer. Good one. Kind. Not the smarmy kind who charges you for breathing. I'm calling him." "Rita." "Nope. No more Rita. You sat here in this quiet house thinking you were powerless. But you're not. You're just tired. There's a difference. And tired women need reinforcements." I watched her tap through her contacts, mouth moving fast. I should have stopped her. But I didn't, because for the first time in months, maybe years, someone was fighting for me. Not using me. Not tiptoeing around me. Not laughing in my face. Just fighting. And I wasn't about to stop that. Not now. The lawyer's name was Marlon. He arrived the next afternoon in a wrinkled linen shirt and shoes caked with dust. Said he'd been at his son's soccer game. Didn't want to reschedule when Rita called. That alone made me trust him more than half the men who've ever sat in my living room. We met out in the back garden. My garden. My sanctuary. Where I'd once planted roses with bare hands and burned shoulders. Where Brian used to chase fireflies before he decided I wasn't worth remembering. Marlon took his time. Asked questions slowly. Took notes with a pen that had bite marks in the cap. "You're listed on the property deed as sole owner, correct?" I nodded. "Paid the final mortgage bill in 2004. He tilted his head. "Did you ever sign anything transferring ownership?" "No," I said firmly. "I remember signing refinance papers once, but I was still the only name." "Perfect," he said, scribbling. I blinked. "That's good?" He looked up, smiled kindly. "That's excellent. Margaret, you're not just the homeowner. You are the only legal owner. No one else has rights to this house unless you gave it to them." I stared at him, unsure how to breathe around that truth, because I hadn't felt like an owner in years. I felt like a guest, like a burden they tolerated in exchange for my utility bills and babysitting, and always saying yes. "You mean," I said slowly, "if I wanted to sell this house, I could?" Marlon gave a short laugh. "You wouldn't even need to tell them." I don't know what he saw in my face in that moment, but something made him set his pen down and lower his voice. "Margaret, they've convinced you this is their home, but that's not how the law sees it, and frankly, it's not how I see it either." I glanced toward the kitchen window. Inside, the house was quiet, hollowed out of warmth, stripped of history. The walls still held pictures of Brian's soccer team and handprints in faded paint, but they hadn't been mine for years. Not really. They took over everything, I said, almost to myself. My sewing room, my fridge, my Sunday mornings. Marlon nodded slowly, but not the deed. A silence fell between us, broken only by the rustle of wind through overgrown tomato vines. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not with fury, just a quiet realignment. A returning. They're in Europe now, I whispered. Told me to watch the house. Marlon raised an eyebrow. Maybe you'll decide to watch it from a distance. I smiled then. A small one. It didn't reach my eyes yet, but it felt like the first real one in a long, long time. I'm going to need a copy of that deed, I said. He nodded. I'll get the paperwork started. And just like that, it began. No yelling, no revenge, just the truth. Finally picked up, dusted off, and held in my hands. I didn't sleep that night. Not from fear. Not really. My hands trembled, yes. My chest clenched, yes. But it wasn't panic this time. It was energy. Raw, electric, like I'd swallowed a live wire. I lay in bed, watching shadows stretch across the ceiling as the hours crawled past. The house creaked in its usual places, by the laundry vent, beneath the second stair. But they didn't scare me anymore, because now I knew something I hadn't dared let myself believe. This house? It wasn't theirs. It never had been. And I didn't owe them a damn thing for walking on the floors I scrubbed, for breathing air I paid to heat, for laughing while I unpacked a suitcase of dreams they never asked about. Around 4:30 a.m., I sat up and turned on the lamp. The room looked the same. Same beige walls, same yellowing blinds. But it felt different. I reached for the notepad I keep by the bed, wrote 2 words, call realtor. That morning, I made eggs I actually wanted to eat. Not some bland, dairy-free nonsense Ashley stocked the fridge with. I brewed real coffee, the kind that lingers in the air like something alive. Then I opened my laptop. I searched for travel deals first, not because I was ready, but because I wanted to be. River cruises, rail passes, small towns where no one knew my name. I clicked through photos of cobblestone streets and cafes tucked under flowered balconies. I let myself imagine, and I didn't feel guilty for it. By 10 a.m., I dialed the number Marlon gave me for a local real estate agent. Her voice was sharp, efficient, professional. Miss Pruitt, my name's Margaret. I'd like to quietly list my house. She asked how soon I wanted to move. I said, soon as it sells. Are you looking to buy again? No, I said. I'm looking to leave. She paused, just a second, then said, understood. That night, I folded the clothes I had once packed for someone else's trip and started thinking about packing for my own, not to follow, but to begin. They would return from Europe in 3 weeks. They expected me to still be here, still quiet, still small, still grateful. I poured a glass of wine and looked out the window. The garden swayed in the wind, soft and alive. It had always waited for me to come back to it. Now, I was coming back to myself. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel old. I felt new. The next few days moved like honey, not slow exactly, just careful, quiet. Every step I took with intention. No announcements, no explanations, just motion. I met with Ms. Pruitt, the realtor, on Thursday. She wore gray flats and didn't bother with fake sympathy. I liked her immediately. She didn't blink when I said I wanted the sale to be private. Quiet, no signs in the yard, no heads up to family, just a clean listing and a clean break. She nodded like she'd seen it before. I've worked with more mothers than I can count, she said as we walked the property. Usually the ones selling in silence are the ones who gave everything away for free too long. I didn't argue. Inside, I started sorting. Not everything, just the things I wanted to carry forward. The quilt I made when Brian was born. The cast iron pan my own mother used every Sunday. A photograph of me in my 20s, standing on a bluff in Michigan. Wild-haired, smiling, free. The rest? I stopped assigning meaning to it. Ashley's holiday decor stuffed in my hall closet? They could buy more. Brian's forgotten tennis racket in the garage? He hadn't touched it in 5 years. I found things I hadn't seen in decades. An old tin of buttons, a postcard from my sister, a stack of letters I'd written to my late husband but never mailed. I read one, then tucked them all into my suitcase. They were the only baggage I'd be carrying that mattered. At night, I searched cruise itineraries again, then small apartments, then long-stay hostels for retirees. One site promised slow travel for the soul. I didn't know what that meant, but something about it made me breathe deeper. By Sunday, the listing was live. No photos, no MLS blasts, just whispers in the right circles. Ms. Pruitt said word of mouth would be enough. And it was. 2 showings. 1 full-price offer. Just like that. I stared at the email confirmation, my hand trembling just slightly. There was a time I would have printed it out and read it to Brian, waited for his approval, laughed it off like it wasn't a big deal. But now I just whispered, "Good," then logged out and made myself a grilled cheese the way I like it. Buttered edges, crusts on, sharp cheddar, no apologies. I wasn't excited. Not yet, but I wasn't scared either. And sometimes, in the beginning, that's what freedom feels like. Not joy, just not fear. Just soft steps, quiet breath, a suitcase zipped with your name on the tag. Brian texted 2 days later. Everything good. No punctuation. No emojis. Just those 2 words. Like a fisherman tossing out a line, half hoping it won't catch. I stared at the screen. The phone buzzed again. Just checking in? House okay? I tapped back. Fine. 1 word. That was all he got. He didn't reply. Of course he didn't. He was probably sipping wine on a rooftop in Florence, uploading photos of cobblestone alleys and laughing children and Ashley's perfect sun hat. The one she'd said was too wide for coach class when she packed it in my hallway. I wondered if he remembered what he said the morning they left. At your age, waking up is the best adventure. Like I was a relic, a living vase tucked behind glass. Fine to look at, never meant to move. I looked around the kitchen as his texts faded from the screen. The countertops gleamed. I had scrubbed them yesterday. Not because anyone asked, but because it was mine to do, and for the first time in years, it felt like my space again. The house was still quiet, still full of their scent, their clutter, their shadows, but less so now. I'd cleared out Ashley's vitamins from the cupboard, tossed expired snacks I never ate but paid for, took down the chore chart she'd pinned to the fridge like I was the hired help. There was a kind of power in those small things. The kids' drawings were still on the corkboard, though. I left those, because their absence hurt less than pretending their love did. The buyer was a retired couple from Oregon. Quiet voices, honest eyes. Ms. Pruitt said they'd take good care of the garden. That was all I needed to hear. I reached for my tea and sipped slowly. Brian hadn't asked about the taxes, or the bills, or me. Just, everything good? I smiled a little. Because yes, it was. And he didn't even realize yet how much of that had to do with him not being here. The buyer's offer cleared within a week. Cash. No contingencies. Just a clean deal and a fast close. Ms. Pruitt smiled when she called. You've got a good one, Margaret. They want a 30-day move-in, but they're flexible. You'll be well clear before anyone even notices. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. That's what I want. We met at her office 2 days later. The paperwork was thick but familiar. The same weight I remembered from the day I bought the house 31 years ago, standing next to a younger Brian who wore a tiny clip-on tie and clutched my leg like I was his entire world. I was. Back then. Ms. Pruitt handed me a pen. Ready? I didn't answer right away. Because my fingers didn't shake, my heart didn't race. I just felt still. The kind of still that comes after too many years of noise. I signed the deed, then the sale agreement, then the bank transfer instructions. The numbers on the last page made me pause. All those years, paying down principal, scrubbing mildew off siding, patching leaky faucets. watching Ashley call my kitchen quaint. It added up to something after all. 7 figures. Mine. Personal account. Private access. Not one penny traceable to Brian. He wouldn't even know the money existed unless I told him. And I wouldn't. Ms. Pruitt looked at me. Anything else you need? I thought about it. Yeah, I said. A shredder. She blinked. I pulled a file out of my bag. Old paperwork, bills in Ashley's name, a dentist appointment reminder she never picked up, her stupid binder labeled family chores. I fed the pages into Ms. Pruitt's office shredder one by one. Not for drama, just for closure. When I left, I didn't go straight home. I went to the travel agency down the street. Yes, they still existed. I wanted to speak to a person. Someone who would look me in the eye and ask where I wanted to go. The girl at the desk, young, bright smile, freckles across her nose, offered me brochures. I pointed at one. A river cruise? Europe, I said. All of it. The water. The castles. The kind of trip you don't take unless you're free. She grinned. How long? A year, I said, not flinching. I'll come back when I feel like it. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the booking confirmation open on my laptop. Next to it, a manila folder held the final wire transfer receipt. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just let out the slowest breath I'd ever taken. Because it was done. The house? Sold. The money? Moved. My life? About to begin. Rita picked me up at dawn. She honked twice. Not because I was late, but because she's never known how to do anything quietly. When I opened the door, she whistled low. That all you're bringing? I held up the single carry-on bag. I figure I can buy a scarf in Budapest if I need one. She grinned. There she is. We didn't say much on the drive to the port. Just soft music and the sound of tires humming over asphalt. But as the ship came into view, long, sleek, gliding with purpose, I felt something tighten in my chest. I haven't traveled since. Well, ever, I said. Rita glanced at me, then reached over and squeezed my hand. You're not escaping, Margaret. You're arriving. At the check-in kiosk, I handed over my brand new passport. The woman behind the desk scanned it, then smiled. Welcome aboard, Ms. Ward. Ms., I hadn't heard that in years. No, Grandma. No, Mom. No, Margaret, can you grab the kids from soccer? Just Emma's? Like I was a whole person again. A porter took my bag. I stepped onto the ship. It didn't feel real until we started moving. Until the dock slipped away, and the water began to churn gently beneath us. Until the land, that life, started shrinking behind me. I stood on the sun deck with my hands gripping the railing, my scarf whipped in the wind. A waitress offered me a glass of Riesling. I took it. The sky was pinking at the edges. A castle appeared in the distance, just like the ones from the brochures I'd stared at for decades. My phone buzzed. A text. Keys delivered. New owners moved in. Everything's complete. From Ms. Pruitt. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I turned off the phone. Not silence out of anger, just clarity. If they wanted to reach me, they'd have to try a lot harder than that. Next to me, a woman with a Texas twang raised her glass. To new chapters, she said. I clinked mine against hers. To finally writing my own, I replied. And I meant it. I left a note on the front door before I left. Just a little slip of paper, taped crooked, with my handwriting still neat despite the way my hands had trembled. Gone exploring. Just like you said I should. That's all it said. Nothing more. No apologies. No forwarding address. Just a quiet echo of Brian's own words, tossed back at him like a boomerang he never saw coming. I'd folded the note once before I taped it, like it was a letter to a version of me I was finally finished with. A version that waited. A version that asked to be included. A version that got laughed at in her own home. Now, I was sipping espresso on the deck of a ship named Celestia, somewhere between Bratislava and Vienna. I hadn't checked the exact location in hours. Didn't need to. The river carried me forward. That was enough. I wore the navy cardigan, the one I had packed so hopefully, so foolishly weeks ago. It looked better here, against the breeze, the skyline, the freedom. A crew member passed by and offered me a fresh croissant. I took it. I hadn't eaten a croissant in years, not a real one, not one that flaked and crumbled in your lap and made you forget what guilt tasted like. "Are you traveling alone?" he asked kindly. "I'm not sure yet," I said. He smiled like he understood exactly what I meant. Later that afternoon, I sat at the tiny writing desk in my cabin, looking out at the water as it curved past vineyards and stone churches older than anything back home. I opened a fresh page in my notebook, not a journal, not a confession, just a record. And I wrote, "They told me to stay home, so I left home behind." Then I turned the page and kept writing, not because anyone was asking, but because this story, for the first time, belonged to me. 2 days into the cruise, somewhere between Salzburg and Passau, I woke early and wrapped myself in a wool shawl from the onboard gift shop. The morning mist clung to the river like a secret. I brought my coffee to the railing. No makeup, no hurry, just the sound of the water splitting gently below. Then the Wi-Fi connected. A single notification, one message, from Mrs. Ellison, my neighbor of 26 years. "They came back yesterday, stood in the driveway, shouting for 10 minutes. Your son kicked the for sale sign over, like it was your fault the door wouldn't open." I read it twice. I stayed out of sight. But oh, they were furious. "I think you did the right thing, honey." I smiled into my cup. Not from spite, just from knowing I wasn't crazy. For years, I had questioned myself, wondered if I was being too sensitive, too dramatic, too inconvenient. But no. They had built their whole comfort on the assumption that I'd stay quiet. I didn't. And now they were standing in a driveway full of their own assumptions, locked out of a life they thought was theirs to inherit. The image came easy. Brian, red-faced, phone in one hand, pacing the sidewalk while Ashley clicked through her contacts like someone had stolen something from them. But I hadn't stolen anything. I had just taken me back. I turned the phone off, slipped it into my tote. The river ahead shimmered with the first touch of sun. Behind me, my cabin sat tidy and warm. My notebook opened to a page I had titled, "November Plans." Not Thanksgiving, not dinner seating charts or grocery lists, just Prague, Bruges. Maybe nice, if I still feel like talking to people by then. The ship drifted onward. I didn't look back. Not once. His name flashed across my screen the next morning. Brian. For a moment, I just stared at it. The ship's cafe was quiet, filled with hushed conversations and the clink of spoons on porcelain. Outside, a village with red roofs drifted past like a memory. I should have ignored the call, but something in me, not pity, not fear, curiosity maybe, made me press accept. His voice came fast, panicked. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" I stayed silent, just listened. "You sold the house? You didn't tell us? We come back and there's strangers living in your house and a damn note on the door?" "My house," I said evenly. He paused, like he hadn't heard that word before. "What?" I repeated it, calm, steady. "My house. You should have said something. You can't just disappear. That's not how family works." That word family hit me like a match to dry wood. After all the years I spent folding his shirts, saving for his braces, babysitting his children like it was my duty, now he wanted to talk about how family works. "You laughed in my face, Brian." "What?" "The day I asked about joining the trip. You laughed. You told me waking up was the best adventure I should hope for. So I went looking for a better one." "Mom, that's not what I knocked on my own kitchen door, Brian." Silence. I kept going. Not with anger, just truth. "I didn't leave you. You just never noticed I was already gone." He didn't speak. I heard the wind on his end. Maybe he'd stepped outside. Maybe he was trying to process the fact that his mother wasn't who he thought she was. Or maybe he was just shocked the quiet one finally spoke. "I'm happy," I added, because he needed to hear it. "And no, you don't get to know where I am." "Is this because of Ashley?" he asked suddenly, his voice cracking. Did she push too hard? It's because I was invisible for too long. And I liked myself better the moment I stopped waiting to be seen. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just hung up. My hands didn't shake. My coffee didn't spill. I closed the laptop and set it gently on the seat beside me. I didn't need to read the rest. Whatever drama Brian stirred up back home, whatever pity he tried to wring from family or friends, it wasn't mine anymore. That part of the story was closed, finished, not with vengeance, not even with justice, just with truth. And the truth was this: they never asked how I stayed afloat, just assumed I'd keep swimming in their direction. But I don't tread water for people who laugh when I ask to come along. I leaned my forehead against the train window. It was cold, sharp, cleansing. Below us, villages passed by like brushstrokes, little cottages with chimney smoke curling up like secrets. A life I might have dreamed of in another version of myself. But not now, not anymore. Now I wasn't dreaming, I was choosing. And that felt better than any apology ever could. He showed up at Rita's door the next morning. Of course he did. Still thinking some woman, would soften and clean up the mess he'd made. Rita told me about it later, in an email with the subject line, "Your son needs a hobby." She really did it, he said, holding out his phone like it was proof the sky had fallen. She sold the house. Rita didn't even ask him in, just stood there in her bathrobe, coffee in one hand, her eyes cold as ceramic. "She gave you an answer already," she said flatly. "She's lost it," he muttered. "This is crazy." That's when Rita stepped out onto the porch and shut the door behind her. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten him. She just looked him dead in the eye and said, "She's not crazy, Brian, just finally done waiting for permission." Then, and this part made me laugh until my ribs hurt, she pulled a postcard from the pocket of her robe, my handwriting across the back. I'd left it with her before I left. Told her to give it to him when he came looking. She handed it to him with a smirk. It read, "Prague is colder than I thought, but the wine helps. P.S. Please don't make Rita babysit your tantrums." "She's lying," he said, staring at the card like it burned. Rita tilted her head. "About the wine or the tantrums?" He stormed off. No thank you, no goodbye. Just his tires screeching as he backed out of her driveway like he was fleeing a crime scene. Later that day, I sat on a bench in Sesky Krumlov, feeding crumbs to a very entitled pigeon. I read Rita's email twice. Then I laughed. Not bitterly, not painfully, just freely. Because there's something satisfying about watching the people who ignored your boundaries finally trip over them. And knowing you won't be there to pick them back up. Rita emailed me again last night. Simple subject line. He's couch hopping. Apparently, they staying with a friend from college, someone with a spare room and no children, and hopefully the patience for late-night rants about ungrateful parents and unfair surprises. I stared at the message longer than I expected to. No joy, no smugness, just stillness. Outside my window, the Swiss Alps moved like waves made of snow, huge and calm, and so far from the life I left behind. The train hummed beneath me, soft and warm, and sure of where it was going. I closed the laptop and set it gently on the seat beside me. I didn't need to read the rest. Whatever drama Brian stirred up back home, whatever pity he tried to wring from family or friends, it wasn't mine anymore. That part of the